To know about trigonometry for your GCSE Maths exams. And in this video, we're going to explain how trigonometry works, and we're going to go through some exam style questions and especially some harder exam style questions that may come up in your GCSEs. Now, first of all, before we even begin with trigonometry, let me just explain that trigonometry can only be used with right angle triangles. Right angle triangles only. I'll explain why in just a second, but you can only use it with right angle triangles. It will not work with non-right angle triangles, and the fundamentals won't work anyways. So for trigonometry, you just need to memorize this thing, SoH CaH ToA. This is a really useful thing to remember because it's basically all the equations that you need to know for trigonometry. Now, I personally don't like memorizing stuff, but if you just memorize SoH CaH ToA, you'll be able to answer any trigonometry question. So SoH CaH ToA is basically just an abbreviation for S is equal to O over O divided by H, C is equal to A divided by H, and T is equal to O divided by A. Now this isn't exactly the full thing, but it gives you a rough idea first. And I'll explain what each of the letters mean in just a second. And that's why I wrote SoH CaH ToA with one of the letters being on top, because it's this letter divided by the second letter. And when you memorize it, it's pretty useful to write it as SoH CaH ToA with one being on top. And it's really important that these letters are on top. So SoH, the O is on top, CaH, A is on top, and ToA, O is on top. I'll explain what the letters mean with a diagram of a triangle. As I said before, right angle triangles only. And this is why. When you have a right angle triangle, the side opposite the right angle is called the hypotenuse, right? You probably learned this when you did the Pythagoras' theorem back in year 9 or something. The hypotenuse, opposite the right angle, and it's always the longest side. And you can abbreviate that to just the capital letter H, which we see here and here. So I'm going to highlight this with green just so that you can remember this a bit more better. So H is the hypotenuse. Then we have this angle. You'll have the right angle triangle because it's a trigonometry question, but you also have one more angle. Well, you actually have two angles left. So it's your choice which angle you use. So in your questions, you'll either have two different styles of question. One is another angle, so two angles are provided. So one's the right angle, obviously. Two angles are provided. Another one will be only one angle provided. So one angle only. When only one angle is provided, you'll have to use logic to decide which angle you're going to use. But when you have two angles provided, so for example, this might be 35 degrees, you'll know that this is the angle you're going to use, right? So the angle opposite this, the side I mean, this will be the opposite. And we abbreviate that with an O. Simple, right? And O, as we can see, is also in our SoH CaH ToA equation 2 times O and O. The last remaining angle next to the angle that we are provided, or the angle that you've chosen to use, will be the adjacent angle. And this is abbreviated with the capital letter A. Now that's pretty easy, at least with the acronyms, right? Because it's just opposite the angle, the hypotenuse, and adjacent, all with their own respective capital letters. And pretty easy to remember, right? SoH CaH ToA with H for hypotenuse, A for adjacent, and O for opposite. Up to this point is where it's easy. Now it's going to start to get harder. I talked about these the angles being provided, right? I'll explain this in a bit more depth as we go on to the past paper questions. It'll make more sense then. Anyways, we have the hypotenuse, the adjacent, and the opposite side. So the green ones are here as shown. Then what's the S, C, and T then? Because they're nowhere to be seen, right? Well, S, C, and T are kind of like the number pi. When we do pi r squared to get the area of a circle, or pi d to get the circumference, pi is just a number we use to find it. Like, it helps us to get the answer, right? So this S, C, and T is kind of just like numbers that we use to help just find, and it's like a number to describe the relationship between sides. And you do not need to memorize the different numbers for S, C, and T. You have your calculator. And anyways, let's explain what the pink letters mean now. So we had SoH, we had CaH, and we had ToA. S stands for sine. And if you look at your calculator, it's going to have sine right here. Sine, right? So sine, and that's abbreviated on your calculator as just SIN. C is cosine. And that's abbreviated as just COS on your calculator, which you see here. Sine, cosine. And the last one, you can already see tan, right? So this one is actually in full, it's going to be tangent. And it's abbreviated to just tan on your calculator, which we see here. So you'll always see these three buttons on your calculator: sine, cosine, and tangent. And this is how you answer your math papers pretty much. You just use the equations as provided. SoH CaH ToA, and use the equations. So now you probably don't know. At least you know what each of the letters and what each of them mean, right? But how do you use them in your math paper? Well, let's explain that with a bit of a past paper example, because that'll be the best way to explain, in my opinion. So, right angle triangle, you instantly know it's going to be trigonometry. Right angle, opposite. You always label your sides just so that you know which equation to use. So it's going to be the hypotenuse there. And we're provided this missing angle. And we're supposed to find the size of angle x. So we know that this angle is important, and this last remaining angle, we can ignore it. So we know it's going to be this one. So it's going to be the opposite would be here, and the adjacent would be the one next to it. We're not going to use the opposite as this being the opposite with this being the angle, because this angle is irrelevant to us. We don't need it. Now then we can write down our SoH CaH ToA equation. SoH CaH ToA. The opposite length is completely irrelevant to us, right? Because we're not looking for the length of this side. So anything that has an O in it, we can just ignore. So that leaves us with the CaH equation, right? So I explained before that CaH means C is equal to A divided by H. So that means I actually didn't explain it fully. It means C theta is equal to A divided by H, so 3 divided by 8. Now what does this theta mean? This theta just means the angle that you're looking for. So I could rewrite this as C cosine. C means cosine, by the way, so it's best to write cosine. Cosine multiplied by x is going to equal 3 over 8. Then how do you find x? We're looking for x, right? Well, you might think you just divide by cosine on both sides by doing x is equal to, well, 3 over 8, you put that into decimal form and then you divide by cosine. No, that's not how you do it. There's actually the inverse of cosine, cosine to the power of -1. And you can access that on your calculator by just pressing shift. So you press shift and you then press cosine. And in yellow, the yellow text means the numbers that come up when you press shift. So you're going to press shift and then cosine to get cosine -1, which you can faintly see there, cosine -1. So you're going to do shift to do the opposite, to get rid of the cosine we have here, right? Shift and then cosine. This works for anything else. So when you're trying to get rid of tangent, you just do shift tangent, shift sine, whatever. Cosine x is equal to 3 over 8, right? So you're going to do shift and cosine to get cosine to the power of -1. And you'll get, in your calculator, when you do shift to the power of cosine, it'll give you cosine, -1, and then something in brackets. In there, you can just input 3 over 8 because it'll be x is equal to, let me just change the color. X is equal to cosine -1 to brackets 3 over 8. That's what you're going to input into your calculator. And when you do that, 3 over 8 into your calculator, you'll get an answer of 67.975. Usually we're going to round this to 2 decimal places, so we're just going to put 67.98 degrees as our final answer. Try this for yourself. See if you can access shift and cosine, and see if you can get this menu, cosine to the power of -1. And that'll give you, and then you input the fraction into your equation, and then you get 67.98 as your final answer. Okay, let's look at one more question. Below is a right angle triangle, so we instantly know it's trigonometry again. And it even conveniently tells us that it's trigonometry. Opposite the right angle, hypotenuse. And we have provided this angle this time, so we know we're going to use this angle, so this angle is going to be the opposite, and the one next to it is going to be the adjacent. We're going to ignore this angle because it's relevant to us. Then you can write down your SoH CaH ToA equation. This is why it's really useful to memorize this equation, SoH CaH ToA. And then we're looking for the length of x. And we're provided the hypotenuse, but we are not provided a, and we don't need to find out a. So anything with a, we're just going to cancel out and delete. So we're going to use the SoH equation this time. This means that sine And remember I said sine theta is equal to O divided by H, right? But we are provided theta this time, and it's 36 degrees. So instead of sine theta, we're just going to input it. Sine multiplied by 36 degrees is going to equal us opposite divided by hypotenuse. Opposite is our x, our unknown. We're trying to find that, divided by our hypotenuse, which is 7, right? And you can just do sine multiplied by 37 into your calculator. And how you do that is you press sine, and that'll give you a bracket when you press sine. Once you do that, you just input 36, close brackets, and if you do that into your calculator, you'll get an answer of 0.58. I'll round that to 3 decimals, so 0.588. Once you have 0.588, we're going to know that 0.588 is equal to x over 7, right? Well, this is basically algebra now. You just multiply by 7 on both sides to get x is equal to 0.588 multiplied by 7, which will give us our final answer of 4.116. We'll round that to 2 decimal places, and that'll give us an answer of 4.12 centimeters for x. That's how you do trigonometry. Well, let's get another question. Work out the length of x. We're provided the angle this time, so we know that this side's going to be the opposite. The one next to it's going to be the adjacent. Sorry, that's not the adjacent. Right angle. So this is going to be the hypotenuse. The last one remaining is going to be the adjacent. Make sure you don't make that mistake. Remember, one opposite the right angle is always the hypotenuse. Then we can just write down our SoH CaH ToA equation again. And we can find out which one that we don't need to use. We're trying to find the length of x, and we're provided the adjacent. But we don't need to find the opposite, and we're not provided it. So we can cross out anything that has the opposite in it, and we know we're going to use the CaH equation this time. So CaH is cosine theta is going to equal A divided by H, right? We are provided theta, so cosine 40 is going to equal adjacent 25 divided by x, because the hypotenuse is our unknown that we want to find. So cosine 40 into your calculator. How you do that, I'll just write it down one more time in case you forgot. You press cosine on your calculator, and it'll show a bracket. You just type in 40, close brackets, and that'll give you an answer of 0.766 to 3 decimal places. 0.766, and we have the x unknown, right? So 0.766 is equal to 25 over x. We multiply by x on both sides to make it all. Actually, no. Yeah, we'll do that. 0.766, x is equal to 25, right? How are we going to get rid of the x? Well, I just prefer to just make this a whole number first. I know it's another step, but it just makes me like happy to do it. So I just do it. Multiply by 1,000, 10, 100, 1,000. So 766x is going to equal, we're going to multiply 1,000 again here. So 3 zeros, 25,000. And we divide by 766 on both sides. So 25,000 divided by 766 will give us x is equal to 32.64 to 2 decimal places. So x is 32.64. And when you get your answer with trigonometry questions, just compare and make sure it makes sense, right? The hypotenuse is always the longest side, right? And does the proportions make sense? More or less so. So it's probably going to be right. Always just check your answers like that. Okay, this one's a bit of a problem-solving question, and the words might get challenging, but once you read it slowly, it gets pretty easy. So a ladder is placed against the vertical wall. So this is going to be the wall, and this is going to be the floor, and this is going to be the ladder, right? To be safe, it must be inclined between 70 and 80 degrees to the ground. So the incline, this is the incline. This should be 70 and 80 degrees to the ground. So we're looking for this angle. This is our unknown. All right, that is x there. Is the ladder safe? Well, to do that, we're just going to have to find x, right? Well, let's find out. Hypotenuse is h. Opposite the angle we're looking for, O. And the adjacent, the one next to it, is A. I'll write that over here just so that it's a bit more clear. Well, we're provided the A and the O, but we don't need the H. So let's just write down our SoH CaH ToA equation first. SoH CaH ToA. We don't need the H, so anything with H we can remove. So we're going to use our ToA equation this time. I think that's our first time using it today. That means that tangent multiplied by theta is going to equal O divided by A, right? Opposite divided by adjacent. We are not provided the theta sign, so I just replace that with tangent x. Tangent multiplied by x is going to equal opposite 5.8 divided by the adjacent 1.5. Right? And to get rid of tangent, we just remember we press shift on our calculators, and then we go to press tangent. That'll give us tangent to the power of -1, and that'll give you a bracket to fill out. And in the bracket, we just put 5.8 divided by 1.5. Try that out on your calculators. So shift tangent, that'll give us tangent -1 bracket something. Fractions 5.8 divided by 1.5. Close brackets. That'll give us an answer of 75.4998. To 2 decimal places, that'll be 75. Well, that's going to round up again, so 75.5 actually. And that'll be equal to x, which is the angle that we're looking for here. And if you take a look, to be safe, it must be inclined between 70 and 80 degrees to the ground, right? Well, 75.5 is clearly in between them, so it's clearly safe. So yes, it is safe. Now they want us to calculate the length of the ladder. Well, if you're confused what the length is going to be, we're already provided these two, so it's going to be the only one remaining, right? So we're supposed to find the hypotenuse now. Well, there's 2 ways you could do this. You could use SoH CaH ToA, and you could use this angle and this angle to find the hypotenuse, or you can use Pythagoras' theorem, because a squared plus b squared is going to equal c squared. Let's just use Pythagoras' theorem this time, just to practice that a bit. So Pythagoras' theorem is a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. So 1.5 squared plus 5.8 squared is going to equal c squared. By the way, the order of a and b doesn't really matter because you're just adding anyways. So we're going to do 1.5 squared on our calculator plus 5.8 squared on our calculator. That's going to give us 35.89 is equal to c squared. And to get c, we just square root 35.89, which will give us 5.99 to 2 decimal places. So 5.99. And then just go back up and just see if the sizes make sense. 5.99, hypotenuse should be the longest, and it is the longest, and it makes sense. So it's probably going to be right, so 5.99. All right, shown below is a right angled triangle DEF. Angle E is 12 degrees larger than angle D. Another problem-solving question we have. So angle E is 12 degrees long. Okay, so first of all, we have the 90 degrees here. So angle D plus angle E is going to equal 90 degrees, right? Because we already have 90 and triangles add up to 180. So these 2 angles are going to have to equal 90 degrees. Angle E is 12 degrees larger than angle D, right? Let's make an equation. If angle D is x and angle E is x plus 12, right? It's going to equal 90 degrees. With a minus 12 on both sides, that should give us 78. Yep, 78 is equal to 2x. So x is 78 divided by 2, which will be 39. So angle D is going to be 39. And angle E is going to be 12 degrees larger than 39. So 39 plus 12, which will be 51. And just double check that 51 plus 39 makes 90, and it does. So you know that your angles are correct. So angle D is going to be 39. And angle E is going to be 51. What do they want us to do now? They want us to find out the length of DE, the hypotenuse. Let me just get rid of all the working out for the angles so that we have enough space. Okay. So we know the angles and we know one of the lengths. So we're looking for DE. And we have 2 angles that we know. So we can choose now. Do you want to use this angle or this angle? Whichever you want. So I'll just use the 51. So this will be the opposite now, and this will be the adjacent. If you chose this angle, this will be the opposite, and this will be the adjacent. So it'll just use different numbers anyways. SoH CaH ToA equation, right? And we're looking for the hypotenuse, and we have the opposite provided, but we don't have the adjacent, and we don't need to find the adjacent. So anything with an A, we're going to cross out. So we're going to use the SoH equation today. So sine, and then we're provided the angle, 51. Remember, we chose to use this angle, so this angle we can also cross out. It's irrelevant to us. Sine 51 is going to equal opposite divided by hypotenuse. What's opposite 50? Divided by hypotenuse, which is our unknown. If you do sine 51 into your calculators, you'll get 0.77714. And yeah, let me just write that on the side. I'm going to run out of space here, aren't I? So sine 51 is 0.77723 decimal places. Is equal to 50 divided by x. Let's all move that to one side. 0.777x is going to equal 50. So we can multiply this by 1,000 to get rid of the decimals. So 777x is going to equal 50 and then 3 decimals. Now, obviously, this isn't the best way, but I just like doing this method. Now, obviously, this is just solving equations, so you can use whichever method you want. X, we're going to divide 50,000 by 777, which is going to give us 64.35 to 2 decimal places. So x, which is the hypotenuse, is going to be 64.35. I just double check that the length makes sense, and it does. Hypotenuse would be longer than 50, and the proportions more or less make sense. Okay, the diagram shows two right-angled triangles. Calculate the value of x. Okay, don't get stressed when you see this question. When I first saw this question, I got a bit stressed, but it's just a two-step question. Otherwise, it's pretty easy. So, hypotenuse. I'm supposed to find the value of x, right? But we only have one value here, so we need to get one of the lengths at least. And we know the length of this because we can find it out by using SoH CaH ToA to find this length. So 5 centimeters hypotenuse, and this is the opposite, and this will be the adjacent. So if you write down our SoH CaH ToA equation, we're looking for the opposite, and we don't have the hypotenuse, and we don't need to find the hypotenuse, so we can ignore anything with h. So we're going to use the ToA equation today. Tangent, and we have the angle provided, 50. I think I'm going to run out of space in here, so I'm just going to move to the side. Tangent 50 is going to equal opposite divided by adjacent. Opposite is our unknown, so we'll replace that with an x, and adjacent is 5 centimeters. If you do tangent 50 into your calculator, tangent 50, you'll get 1.19175 to like 5 decimal places. So 1.19, I'll put that to 3 decimal places, 1.192, and that's going to equal x over 5. You can multiply both sides by 5 to get rid of the denominator. That will give us x is equal to this number multiplied by 5, which will give us 5.959 to 3 decimal places. So this O, the length of O, it's going to be 5.959. So I'll just replace that there. Let me get a black pen. 5.959. I'd rather keep 3 decimals or more if possible, just so that our answers are more exact. And does this number make sense? Well, it's going to be longer. It's clearly longer than this, so it's going to be longer, but yeah, more or less makes sense, right? Now we're looking for x. Well, this x is going to be, well, first of all, we have a right angle, hypotenuse. Opposite the angle provided, so it's going to be the O, and this length that we just found out is going to be the A. We don't need the hypotenuse again because it's an unknown and we're not looking for the hypotenuse, and we have the adjacent and opposite provided, so we're using the ToA equation again. The ToA equation says tangent 38 this time, tangent 38 is going to equal opposite divided by adjacent. Opposite angle is our unknown, so x divided by adjacent, 5.959. Well, we can do tangent 38 into our calculators. And that'll give us 0.781285 continuous. And you can multiply that number by 5.959 to get rid of the denominator. And that'll give us x is equal to 4.66 to 2 decimal places. So x will have a length of 4.66. And does it make sense? Yeah, more or less. And just so you know, these lengths are not to scale. It's never to scale. So just make sure that the angles just more or less line up. That's the point. All right, this time we have a question without the calculator being used. When you don't have a calculator being used, you'll be provided the angles and the different signs, so you don't need to worry about that. So we need to find the angle length of side x. Opposite the right angle is always going to be the hypotenuse. The angle is provided here, so this will be the opposite, and the remaining last one will be the adjacent. We can write down SoH CaH and ToA. And which one will we use? Well, we're supposed to find x, which is our adjacent, and we're provided the hypotenuse, but we don't need to do anything with the opposite. So anything with the O will cancel out, and we're going to use our CaH equation today. So cosine multiplied by 25 is going to equal all adjacent divided by hypotenuse. Adjacent, we don't know. It's our unknown, so we'll replace that with an x. Hypotenuse is 10. If you put cosine 25, well, we're not supposed to use our calculator. I was about to use it. You'll find 25 here, cosine 0.906 is equal to x over 10. You can multiply both sides by 10. Pretty easy to do, right? So 9.06 is equal to x. That's our final answer. X will be 9.06. And do the numbers make sense? More or less, yeah. It's always smaller than the hypotenuse. And yeah, it lines up. So 9.06 for x. Shown below is a parallelogram. Calculate the area of a parallelogram. You might not know how to find the area of a parallelogram, but just it's pretty obvious if you look at it. The lines just slant to the right, right? So it's going to be the same as finding the area of a rectangle, base times height, right? You can't multiply 10 by 7 because that's going to give you a totally different area. So I'll draw an imaginary line like so. We need to find the height so that we can do 10 multiplied by this. And just so you know, it will make sense because this slanted towards the right, slanted towards the right, so the answers will make sense. So a common mistake would just be doing 10 multiplied by 7 and thinking it's like a year 5 question. Not even year 5, year 2 question. So we need to find the length of this height. Well, we know that this is going to be a right angle, right? Because it's perpendicular. So this will be always the hypotenuse. Then the one next to the angle, adjacent, and this will be the opposite angle because we're provided this angle. We can write down SoH CaH ToA. We are provided the hypotenuse. We need to find the opposite, but nothing to do with the adjacent. So anything with an A, we can cross out. We're using the SoH equation today. We'll provide the angle, so it's sine 50 is going to equal opposite divided by hypotenuse. Opposite is our unknown, so x divided by hypotenuse, which is 7. Sine 50 into your calculator will give you 0.766 continuous, and then you can multiply that answer by 7 straight away to give you 5.36 to 2 decimal places is equal to x. Some people, a common mistake is just stopping here. Remember, you're supposed to find the area. The height is 5.36, so you're going to multiply 5.36 by 10 to give you 53.6 as the area of the parallelogram. Don't forget your unit, centimeters squared. 53.6 centimeters squared. All right, last question. This video is long, I know, but it's the last one. And if you can solve this question, you're good to go with trigonometry, at least 2D trigonometry. So try pausing the video and see if you can answer it. All right, ABCD is a trapezium. Provided a bunch of lengths and angles, and work out the size of angle ABC. Well, we can clearly see that there's only 2 written on the diagram, but 4 are provided. So I'm gonna fill it out so that we know what we're doing here. Let me just enlarge this diagram before we continue, just so that it's a little easier. Yeah. All right. Work out the size of angle ABC, so it's conveniently labeled X here. AM is 2.5, so we know that this is going to be 2.5. AB is 26, so this entire thing is going to be 26 centimeters. CD is 19.2, that's already written, and angle BAD is 74 degrees. I need to find this length. Well, how are we going to find this length? How will we possibly find it? I'm going to draw a line to assist us. Perpendicular line, and this will be 90 degrees. So we can pretty much solve this if we can find this length and if we can get this length. Once we get these 2 lengths, it should be pretty easy. And remember, these 2 lengths are not guaranteed to be the same. So let's just do just a bit of calculation to see if they are the same. So we're told that this entire thing is 26 centimeters, right? A to B. And this is 19.2. So if we do 19.2 plus 2.5 minus that from 26, that should give us the length of this. And if it's also 2.5, then it is identical. And this angle will also be 74 degrees. But it probably will not, because then the question will be way too easy. But let's just check it out just in case. 26 minus, sorry, forgot the minus sign. 26 minus 19.2 plus 2.5. So we're going to find out the length from here to here. And if we minus this length from the total length, we're going to get this length, right? So 19.2 plus 2.5 will give us 21.7. And if you minus that answer from 26, that'll give us a length of 4.3. So it is not identical. So never assume that it's going to be identical. This length is 4.3. And let's just check it out just to ensure that we did correctly. So 2.5 plus 19.2 plus 4.3 gives us 26, which is correct. Yes. So now we know this length. We just want to find this perpendicular length now. That's going to be pretty easy to do. We have 74 degrees and we have this length provided. So what could we use to help us with this question? Well, this is going to be a right angle here as well, too. And so this will be the hypotenuse. We need just one more to find out this length, right? So 26, 19.2. What could we use to help us? Well. See, it requires a bit of thinking. How can we find this length or this length? What can we use? My mind's just gone blank. How can we find this length? Or some other length that would help us. 4.3. Are we provided another length? No, we're not. 2.5. AB is 26. 74. Let's just write SoH CaH ToA first. Don't know how that'll help me, but it might. And so this will be the opposite, and this will be the adjacent. We need at least one more length, right? Because we're oh, never mind. That's, my mind just went blank. We don't need to do this. We can just find it out using this too, because we're looking for the first of all, we have nothing to do with the hypotenuse, right? We're not looking for the hypotenuse, so we can ignore anything with the hypotenuse involved, and then we can just find the adjacent and the opposite. Yeah, we can use the ToA equation to find this length, because tangent, what's that length? Tangent 74 is going to equal opposite divided by adjacent, right? We'll provide the adjacent 2.5 divided by, opposite divided by adjacent, and we don't know the opposite. So opposite is our unknown, and adjacent we're looking for. We have it, 2.5. All right, that'll take a while. So tangent 74 into your calculators will give you 3.487 continuous, and you multiply that by 2.5 to get rid of the denominator. That'll give us 8.719 to 3 decimal places is equal to x. So we know that this length is now, this length we just found out is 8.719, and that's going to be the same one as here as well, because it's the same perpendicular lines. So 8.719, and we have 4.3. Now we can finally use this to answer our question. Let me just get rid of this so I can just do some additional working out. We have our last section. Opposite, this will be the hypotenuse, and this will be the adjacent, right? We're looking for the missing angle, and we're provided the opposite and the adjacent, and we're not looking for the hypotenuse, so we don't need the hypotenuse. We're using the ToA equation again. So tangent multiplied by x, which is our unknown. So it usually be tangent theta, but we can replace that with x. Opposite divided by adjacent. So opposite 8.719 divided by adjacent 4.3. If we do that, 8.719 divided by 4. Wait, actually, I should do this first. We can get rid of the tangent by x, and you put shift, and you go tangent minus 1, right? If you press shift and then tan, you got tangent minus 1. And in your calculator, you get tangent minus 1 and a bracket, and you'll input this fraction into here. If you do that, shift tangent and then fraction 8.719, denominator is 4.3. If you do that, you will get an answer of 63.75 to 2 decimal places, and that'll be the size of angle x. That is all you need to know for trigonometry concerning 2D shapes. Wow, this was a long video, but anyways, I hope this explains trigonometry. And if you've watched this video till the end, you'll be able to answer pretty much any 2D trigonometry questions. I specifically picked the questions that are hardest from the Corbett math ones. I'll leave the worksheet link down below. Just remember SoH CaH ToA, it's only for right angle triangles. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching this one.